So this big beautiful thing is Fumana from Frap Tools. Now, I have a lot of videos coming with this, but in this video we're going to look at parametric scanning of these 16 48 dB fixed filter bandpasses, effectively like a graphic EQ. Now, first of all, let's look at the controls for parametric scanning. I have the odd and even outputs, which are the first ones I'm going to use, but let's just remove those for now. In this particular patch, I'm going to plug a single band in, which will go to the odd and even bands. And we're going to look at using the level controls and the scanning controls. Now, the first control in green is a parametric tilt, where we can shelve in some top and remove some bottom, or add some bottom and shelve out some of the top. Much like you can see on those LEDs. The second knob, the kind of yellow, first in the yellow series of knobs, sets whether we are attenuating or amplifying with this scanning. So I'm going to start by turning everything down. Turn up amplification. The mini pots are CV inputs. So CV in for shelf, CV in for amplification or attenuation, CV over frequency, and CV over the Q, or the kind of width of the filters. So when I turn the width up, we can see a band appear active. LED is now lit up, and that's the frequency. Turning this up, we can see it gets wider, starting to spread, and we can still scan that around. Now, if this was attenuating, it wouldn't attenuate from nothing. So first, let's add some of the bands. Now, attenuate, we can see we're removing bands, and we can remove several depending on the width control. We can kind of kill this scanning by just turning these down to the left. But first, let's check out our sound that we're going to be using. A big, rich mix of analog oscillators and a little bit of noise. You're just listening to this coming through a VCA to the side of the module. This isn't coming through yet. So I'm going to patch from the all output, so all of the bands come out. This is just in mono through a single output and one input to both bands. Now you can hear that change of tone already. Here's the tilt. It's just gorgeous and smooth. Now let's remove these bands. You could, of course, create your own shape and still tilt around them. Now I'm going to turn this up so that these controls will now amplify. Turn up the Q and the frequency. There's our band, just a single band. How wide that is. Tilt will still work here. So let's get 3 LFOs, not synced to anything, making these bands dance around with the tilt, the frequency and the Q or width of that scanning. And starting with the tilt, we can see an LFO pushing these around, bottom end and high end kind of dancing around. Now let's find a band we want to mix. Now this single band, let's make that dance around with an LFO. Just going to slow that down. Now let's make the cue of that band move. And again, we can do all of this over an existing level of those bands. And we can also attenuate that. Let's just pull the tilt out. And you can hear, I keep using the word kind of dancing, kind of dances around these harmonics beautifully. Let's add the tilt again. Now let's move to a patch in stereo. Now strictly not stereo, I'm still going to use a single input which will normalize across to all the bands, but I'm going to come out of the odd and even bands and pan these hard left and right. So make sure you're listening in stereo, good speakers or headphones. So let's start that again. That's one side. That's another. Hard left and right. We can still tilt. We're going to set this to amplify now. Turn up the Q slightly. And with a really thin Q where only one band is active, you can hear this kind of ping around in stereo. Let's use an LFO on that. And an LFO to the Q, the width. And another to tilt. So again, green is tilt. This controls the amplification or attenuation of those bands, and I think that's the only device that actually does both. This is the frequency for the scanning, and this is the Q, the width of the scanning. So that was a big rich mix of several analog oscillators tuned up to a chord. Let's check this out with an odd and even input, stereo input if you like, with a loop that's got drums, bass and synths, a kind of full little mix, and see how that sounds. So continuing our look at the parametric scanning, let's take a look at using this over a musical mix or loop. I have some acoustic drums, some sample drums, a little beat that I made with a cheesy-ish, funky-ish synth bass, some synth pads and some mellotron pads. Here's that sound raw and dry, straight out of Logic that you can see on screen. Here's the beat that I made. Now let's plug that into Fumana and we're going to go stereo out. We've already got this plugged in. Because I'm going into the odd and evens and coming out odd and even, this is what I mean when I say stereo. One side. And the other. Now, we can use this to select attenuation or amplification. But these are kind of cancelled out when they're to the left. That's the tilt. Obviously make sure you're listening in stereo, as these are hard panned. Let's modulate tilt with an LFO. Now, with this set to attenuate to the left, we can use these to scan around and kind of comb through these filters. So this is now attenuating. And that's how much attenuation. This is the kind of cue, or how wide they are, from a single band to several. Let's go the other way though. Turn everything down. Set this to amplify. Let's get some LFOs into this. First into the kind of width. Into the frequency. We can still tilt. Now if these were set to attenuate, that would work. Over the mix. Let's also put an LFO into the amount of amplification on these bands. Now I'm going to take this out in terms of the odd and even outs that are hard panned left and right. And we're going to go back to being in mono by taking a signal straight out of the all output. So it just sounds glorious over a full mix. Taking odd and even as a stereo thing. I mean, it's not really stereo. You're splitting these bands and combs, much like the images on screen that Simone from Frap Tools sent. We're kind of combing through the left and right hard panning that I've done. Or just take the all out and get all the bands at a single point. The odd and even inputs also aren't really stereo inputs. They're the inputs to the odd and the even bands, but still you can treat them as left and right, and I really like that. There's lots of separation that I hope you've heard through your headphones or speakers. So for this final patch, I wanted to share something that Simone from Frap Tools said I should try out, which is a square wave and a wave folded tone going through this thing. So I have an odd and an even input, which is a square and a folded sine triangle hybrid. But let's just check out those sounds on their own first. We're coming out of the all output in mono. Well, again, it isn't mono or stereo, but I'm choosing to pan these at points. A single mono output. Here's a square. Simple enough, low square. And here's the folded tone. So let's check that out through Fumana. Now together they offer an interesting blend of harmonics to kind of scan through. With this set to attenuate, let's do some parametric scanning, attenuating, the bands. These are 2 sample and hold signals. We'll also do some tilt from an LFO. And as we have been through this video, let's go from the all output, which is panned mono, and actually go to the odd and even, hard panned left and right. So do make sure you check this out in headphones, because it sounds glorious in these. Now we'll go back to the single all output, and I'm actually going to get these 2 sounds modulating. The square wave with pulse width modulation, so let's hear that on its own first. Kill this scanning. So that's now pulse width modulation over this square output on my oscillator. And for this wave folded tone, I'm going to get the crossfade between a sine and a triangle modulating, and also the wave folder depth modulating. So with the pair of them, it's already a fairly complex tone. Let's create a kind of shape that we like for the harmonics. Start to modulate these. I'm going to amplify the bands this time. Again, my sample and hold signals. And some LFO back into tilt. Again, let's do this in stereo by taking the odd and even outputs and hard panning them. And for one final thing, I'm going to add a pitch sequence to both of my oscillators. So Fumana is just a beautiful and simple way to really do complex tones. The parametric scanning is fantastic, and that's just one little thing we've looked at in this video. Hit like, subscribe, share this video, be sure to leave a comment, it'd be great to chat about this, or anything else I've done in the video, or other videos. Go support me on Patreon if you'd like extra content, and watch out for more Fumana videos for Fumana Friday, or Fumana Fridays, making sure I get this hashtag right. Cheers for watching.